Hey, it's Dr. Jeremy. What you're about to watch is an excerpt from one of my live electric medicine training events. In this segment, we dive deep into how the stomach really works and why what you've been told about acid, reflux, and digestion might not be the full picture. Stick around to the very end because I've got a free resource that expands on this topic and shows you exactly how to apply these concepts in your clinic. Let's jump in.
Super important organ, don't you think? Stomach organ. Why? Because it's the main organ that produces sodium bicarb. That's some information right there that goes against all of Western medicine.
GLP-1.
No comment. The stomach is supposed to be a pH of, the internal of the stomach, 1.9. So acid reflux is a symptom of too much stomach acid or not enough stomach acid?
Not enough.
Not enough. When the pH is above a 1.9 in the stomach and that food goes into the duodenum, there's a neural signal that is supposed to say closed sphincter at the top of the stomach. But a 2.1 pH is not going to send that signal. Stomach sphincter stays open, contents can escape. Okay. Next part of that, you eat something that is a pH of 5.5, like a Coca-Cola. Goes into the stomach at 5.5. The stomach has to produce acid, enough acid molecules to drop that 5.5 down to 1.9. From the amount of molecules to go from 5.5 down to 1.9 is an equal amount of molecules of sodium bicarb going in the venous system of the stomach organ. Now you eat a alkaline food like baking soda, which is like 11, guessing, 10 or 11 pH. Goes into the stomach. The stomach has to take it from 11 pH all the way down to 1.9. Isn't that an awful amount of acid and bicarb? More than if you drink the Coca-Cola? Does that make sense? Can you see how eating alkaline leads the stomach to making more alkaline and more acid as well? Does that make sense, y'all? Mm-hmm. Now, you know, I teach a lot of stuff in this weekend, and I teach everything that I believe to be true, that I've seen over the years and tested and verified and snuck around the hospital, making sure that these conspiracies are true. But you're not going to want to take this knowledge and throw it in people's faces that don't believe. It's not going to go well. So when I call you at midnight and I say, what's the main function of the stomach organ? You can tell me it's to produce sodium bicarb. But if you're talking to a medical doctor, you're not going to want to say that, right? Because they believe the main function is to produce acid. I'm using this as an example because I'm sure I've said some very controversial stuff in the past 2 days that you're going to want to keep to yourself, right? A lot of my teachers have been suppressed. The greatest electric medicine person in all of history, Nikola Tesla. What happened to him? A lot of people don't even know that he was into electric medicine, that he was sending hundreds of thousands or even millions of volts through the air into his body, healing himself while he's reading his book. How do you keep it safe, 1,000,000 volts? You have to decrease the amperage to minuscule amounts, nanocurrent, picocurrent. But he was suppressed. He died broke in a hotel or something like that. You got Bob Beck, who in one of his last lectures said, this is the answer to all infectious disease. And then they killed him a couple years later. You have the founder of the root canal procedure, Dr. Meinig, who created the root canal procedure and then tried to spend the rest of his life trying to prevent dentists from doing the root canal procedure, wrote a book called Root Canal Cover-Up or something like that. What do you think? You think they listened to him and stopped doing root canal procedures? So they listened to him when he invented the damn thing, but then the same guy who invented it is saying, don't do it, and they put the kibosh on that. I said, who's my second favorite dentist in the world history? Weston Price. What happened to him? Well, he went from doing 25 years, he was the head of the American Dental Association, I believe, research department. And he did 25 years of research with a 60-person team of scientists, dentists, medical doctors, and toxicologists. Published 2,000 pages of research, which I bought, and it's sitting in my closet. Did you all ever hear this? No, because they suppressed them. Now the Weston Price Foundation is focused on nutrition and not even mentioning dentistry. The whole point is we have to lay low, stay under the radar, stay by the phone, because at midnight we ride. When there's enough of us that know, I'll give you all a call and then we can take over. But lay low until then. I only talk controversial. You think I'm walking around the hospital talking about this stuff?
All the time.
I only unleash my built-up conspiracy theories with you all in private. Isn't this private? Digestive sphincters. To close the sphincter at the top of the stomach, you can treat C2 or gallbladder 20 minutes. That will close the sphincter. Very important for patients with stomach organ issue. How do you know stomach organ issue? Well, I don't know, heartburn, or I'm on omeprazole, a stomach acid decreaser, which if you're stopping the acid cells from secreting acid, are you also stopping the stomach cells from secreting sodium bicarb? What drug is the most fantastic to create the most disease in your body over the long term?
Proton.
Proton pump inhibitor, omeprazole. Because now you're not digesting. You don't have raw building blocks anymore for your cells to rebuild. And this is a cascading effect. So that emotional issues, insomnia, PTSD, all these psychological issues, a lot of times are stomach organ deficiency, because you need to break proteins into amino acids, precursors for serotonin, or precursors for beta endorphin, or precursors for XYZ, you name it. GABA for sleep problems. Why am I telling you this? Because if you're trying to get your patient off of the omeprazole, you're going to need to constantly, in the beginning, keep closing that sphincter. Because they come off the omeprazole, if they feel the burning because you didn't close the sphincter, they're going to want to go back on the omeprazole. But if you can keep closing that 2 or 3 times a week, then it should start closing on its own when you rectify the stomach organ using which neural level?
T89.
T89, correct. Make sense? Cool. Small intestine organ, T11, T12. When you think small intestine organ, think autoimmune disease. Why? Because the inner lining of the small intestine gets inflammation, because there's a deficiency on the nerve feeding the small intestine tissue, gets inflammation, and the body absorbs proteins. Your body's not intended to absorb proteins, which means no more cheeseburgers. No, just kidding. Your stomach's supposed to break down the proteins. Whew, you can keep eating cheeseburgers, it's okay, if your stomach's strong. Stomach's supposed to break down the proteins into amino acids, which floats downstream and goes to the small intestine. And what's the function of small intestine according to TCM? Separate the pure from the impure. That's very poetic for separate amino acids from shit, right? So if there's inflammation on the inner lining of the small intestine organ because the neural level of T11, T12 are deficient, gaps form, proteins absorb into central circulation, immune system attacks foreign proteins, and you get inflammation. How to fix that? T11, T12. How about any other treatment that can rectify the immune system? Blood electric. So autoimmune disorders start suspecting T11, T12 is deficient and the small intestine organ is deficient. So small intestine does a good job and it passes its poop down to large intestine. What's the function of the large intestine organ? Absorb water. Now, do you want your patient to absorb the tap water with the fluoride in it? Or do you want your patient to absorb a more pure water? They say we're like 80% water. So one of the Gucci recommendations is water. You're the only practitioner that's going to recommend water. How silly is that? Clean water. My favorite's distilled with 4 salts is the name brand for sodium bicarb, tiny bit of calcium, tiny bit of magnesium, tiny bit of potassium. So I make my own distilled water with 4 salts, P-H-O-U-R, 4. It's a play on pH, 4 salts. I think that's a horrible name because you try to give it to your patients and they're like, but it's salt and it's going to increase my blood pressure. But no, it won't. It's sodium bicarb. So you have it linked to a very alkaline. And by the way, the stomach produces sodium bicarb, not just bicarb, sodium bicarb. So one method is distilled water with some sort of minerals. I like 4 salts. Another is reverse osmosis is good water. You can get good filtration system that removes chlorine, fluoride, and most of the toxins. That's fine also. Cool. Kidney organs. For some reason, I get this question once a week for the past 2 years. Is it possible to increase kidney function? My patient's got kidney disease. Most of the time it is. Until they reach the final stage, you can correct the kidney organ function, usually. How do you do that? Well, what nerve is deficient in kidney organ disease? You're looking at it, L1, L2. Now the tough question, how do you treat a deficiency in L1, L2? Neural level, L1, L2. What the heck does Dr. J mean when he says deficiency? Very specific, very scientific, in your face. I'm talking about a deficiency of frickin' electricity, but the proper type of electricity. Don't you think they could have made electricity super safe, like the way Nikola Tesla wanted it, where not only could it power my computer, but it could also charge up my body and it'd be congruent with the human body? Absolutely, but they didn't. They wanted to put harmful shit and dangerous shit and meter and charge for it in the walls, right? How much amperage is this system? Do you know?
Which system?
Our electric system.
In your home, it's typically a 200 amp.
Ooh, 200 amps. And I know that milliamps, 1,000th of an amp, is too much, usually, for the body. Urinary bladder, L2, L3, genitalia, L1, 2, and S2, S3. Create a bracket. Is somebody timing 20 minutes for her?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. Digestive and genital urinary. Spleen organ, T9, T10. You can also access it through the vagus nerve. Thymus gland, immune related. And they say, well, you're an adult, you have no thymus gland. No, you still need to take that into account, thymus gland. And then I wrote triple energizer. So if triple energizer is a real organ, I think this is what they mean, because remember that back shoe of triple energizers around L1, and it's the nerve going to the adrenal glands, and the triple energizer is the sympathetic system. That's just a cool linkage.
If you found this post helpful and you're ready to take your understanding of electroacupuncture to the next level, there's one resource you'll want to keep close at hand. Most practitioners overlook how electrical imbalances in the spine directly influence digestion, metabolism, and overall energy regulation. But once you know where to look, the results can be dramatic. That's why I put together a quick start clinical guide that walks you through how to find, confirm, and treat the spinal segment that powers your patient's metabolic function. Download the Pancreas Point Protocol, T9, to master electrical diagnosis of metabolic collapse, so you can quickly identify and correct voltage deficiencies tied to digestion, energy, and blood sugar control. Find it at electroacupunctureinstitute.com/83.